This episode of the Bear and the Beard podcast is brought to you by, well, you.
That's right, Fandomites. We have launched a Patreon for the show, and we're asking you to be a part of it.
We are going to take out only what is necessary to keep the show going and to keep attending live events every month.
And the amount of funds still in the Patreon after that will be donated to our friends over the Children's of Mississippi.
That's right. In return for your generosity, the different tiers will receive different things: spring store discounts, exclusive bonus content, freebies at live events, and more.
So it's a win-win-win.
Shut up and take my money.
You help us keep the cost of the show down, get cool perks, and donate to a great cause.
Sounds simple enough. Join the Patreon today and stay awesome,
stay bearded, and much love.
What's going on, Fandomites? Welcome to our literacy episode, where we actually got to do a bunch of different interviews with a lot of indie creators because we felt like it's time that indie gets a spotlight shined on.
Oh, hell yeah.
We sat down with Fission Comics team. We sat down with two Johns actually. John from Diebold Comics and John from what we're just calling him Endangered John. You'll know which one that is.
Endangered John.
Yeah, Endangered
guy.
So we had some awesome interviews. We were joined by some friends of the cast that also had some very cool questions, but this isn't one of our standard flowing episodes. It's really a bunch of interviews broken up by us telling you who we just interviewed and then who's we're interviewing next. So
it's wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Exactly. So, but the whole message here is support your local indie creators and get those kids reading at an early age, even if you got to hand them a comic book, because that's the future and that's how we do all of our cool stuff as nerds in the time we're in.
And try to find time for yourself.
That's a little violent.
Yeah.
Not for the kids.
But, you know, comic books were a huge inspiration for us. It's why we're nerds now. And it's also why we have such great movies and TV shows to talk about on this show. And without indie creators, because, I mean, DC didn't start out as a huge conglomerate. Neither did Marvel. You know, they started low. And that's what we wanted to shine a spotlight on this week. So join us for Literacy. It's the Great Power and Great Responsibility. Season 3, Episode 13. Right after this. Please stand by.
Hey, listen!
This is the Bear and the Beard Podcast, Season 3.
Hello there.
Your hosts are just two nerdy guys, talking nerdy things.
That's quite nerdy.
This Nerdtastic Duo sits down every episode, sometimes with friends and guests, to explore a new topic related to nerd or pop culture.
Oh, yeah!
They may disagree or argue sometimes, and you may not always agree with them.
I beg your pardon.
But please remember, this show is mostly their opinion with some research and facts added in along the way.
To be fair.
The overall goal is to spread knowledge and love throughout the fandoms and to have fun doing it. Welcome to the conversation. Let's get nerdy with it.
What's going on, everybody? It's the Bear, and in person, the Beard, my majestically bearded faithful co-host, here live, being recorded live at Ridgeland, Mississippi's Public Library. We have sat down here to talk about literacy and how important it is for the younger generations, but also the other part of this episode is to shine a light on independent artists and creators. In this episode, there will be 3 interviews you will see, one with Fission Comics creators, one with Diebold Comics, and then another Mr. Jon McCarthy, that he also does his own independent creations of comic books. But what we wanted to talk about first, before we get to those interviews, is, first of all, just how important literacy is. and the fact that comic books can sometimes bridge that gap for the younger generation. Because for this month specifically, we're doing at the end of the month, which from the time of recording is a long time away. But from the time this comes out, it should be next week, as a matter of fact, we're doing a Harry Potter event at Dogma Tavern where we're going to host trivia, but the original library is helping us with a book drive for Dogma Tavern for the children as well. So we are joined not only me today and Brian, of course, in person, but we have Kaz, who designed our awesome artwork for our coloring book for the second year running, that we gave these out at Comic-Con a couple of weeks ago. And we are joined by Megan from the original library. Thank you for sitting down with us, Megan. So who wants to go first about how important literacy is?
I'll let the ladies go first.
Okay.
Extremely, extremely important. Early literacy is more than just a bridge between pictures to words to, I can have those pictures in my head sometimes, to creativity and getting those on the paper. Not everybody is sketch creative, but some people are word creative.
Right.
But for young children, and there's various levels as you go up with, elementary, middle school, high school, that if they don't get the early part of it, they're missing out on this whole world of books, comic books, all types of materials that they are just don't even know is out there.
Right, absolutely.
And then you have those that have disabilities, those that may be blind, may have dyslexia, may have dysgraphia, may be unable to tell color blindness, because you don't think about color blindness being a barrier. But if you've got little kids, their beginning chapter books are usually in color. If it's not high contrast, the words get lost. So it's definitely very important.
And see, I'm pretty sure I said at one point in one of these interviews y'all are going to see, I think I made the connection that if it had not been for me learning to read and comic books at a young age for me, that I wouldn't have had the visual inside my head when I started reading novels like Ender's Game and the Harry Potter series, the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit.
It helps expand that imagination.
Yeah. Having that visual, but the mental visual is very, very important when you're reading books like that, because then it's just words and you're just looking at it like,
and the comprehension level, you can read words on a page, but it could mean nothing internally. You could absorb none of it if you're not connecting hey, this actually is going to play like a movie or have visual parts to it in my head. Otherwise, it's just sentences, and you can read sentences off the board all day and it not connect.
Not click in your brain. You got to get lost in the story. If you're not getting lost in the story, then you're not actually reading it.
And that's also what we say now, or especially I say now. It's like, all these new shows and everything coming out now. My main request is tell me a good story. I don't care who's in it. I don't care. I mean, I do like the special effects, but those aren't nearly as important as telling me a good story. That's why I'm sitting down and watching this thing, because me personally, I don't have time to actually flip through a book anymore. I mean, I listen to audiobooks when I'm working, but that's
And for some people, audiobooks are also bridges, because you have those. We have even for the children's ones, they've started doing them more and more, not just read alouds, but actual audiobooks.
Right.
And for a child who's never heard a character's voice and inside their own head, to hear the difference of voice when they're listening to it that way makes it also that reality, and that bringing in the pictures like graphic novels and comics do.
That's my struggle when I read. Is it's hard for some stories for me to get lost, because when I'm reading it, I'm hearing my own voice. And I don't want these characters to sound like me.
Because I mean, we want description, but then like very rarely do you have an author actually take the time to go, and he said with his gruff voice, like the first time you hear a character speak, you might get that description, but then it's like 5 chapters back, you're like, and then this character shows up again, it's like, wait a minute, what did his voice sound like again? I'm just gonna fill it in.
I definitely want to add some points to it right there, because I did a lot of reading as a kid, and then I got to a point of where like I not only read comics, but I was also reading like art stuff like Fear Street.
Oh yeah,
I love Fear Street. But also like
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps. But then I started actually like getting into comics and a few other things. So I began to write my own stories myself. And when I was in like high school or whatever. Some stories, of course, were like but since I actually started getting with Stoker McCauley Productions. Working with Bram Stoker's estate, and then getting to actually know John Peel, who was one of the writers from Doctor Who. You didn't know about that. So Dracula's Bedlam was actually written by John Peel, who actually works with Doctor Who, and also did something with James Bond Jr. when we were kids in the '90s. However, it got me back into writing short stories, and I recently wrote something on Facebook with the Full Moon. Of where it's a guy who is struggling with the fact that he knows he's a werewolf, but he knows that he cannot escape the path of him being a werewolf. So some people figured out like, wait, are you a werewolf? I said, yes, I'm a werewolf now. So it was good. It was good reading. My girlfriend actually wrote it. She said it was very good writing. But also when you're reading books, you have a particular style of how you want to write things. Some people could be a little too wordy. Some people say that Anne Rice is too wordy. Some people will say that Stephen King is too wordy. For me, Stephen King is a little too wordy because I try to get into some of his books, but I'm like, okay, yeah.
I've always seen Stephen King as one of those. I'd rather watch the movie adapted from his book,
right?
Just because I feel like he wrote a horror movie in book form is what he did. But then it's like, but we already have horror movies.
Right.
Like I know you started writing before we had horror movies, but now we have horror movies.
Right.
So just write scripts.
His newer novels, though. They're definitely. He did cut down some on some of that, and they're just as good, but with the book format.
Yeah.
I've noticed.
And there was also that book that he did. It was a collection of his short stories too that I heard about recently. I need to check that out. It's not a recent book, but I heard about it recently because someone was like, "You should check this out." It's like. Yeah, as soon as I, get done doing the podcast and everything else, when I find time, I'll sit down and read a Stephen King novel. Sure.
Well, also, like I was going to say earlier too, like whenever I'm actually reading stuff, especially in video games, when I was reading dialogues of characters from like Final Fantasy VII, I imagined Barrett having like a Mr. T's voice type, and sure enough, when Remake came out, the guy who voiced him actually gave him that type of voice I was listening for. I was like.
My name's Barrett with 2 T's.
So it's like when you're diving into that imagination, like that's one of the reasons of why I love being not only as an artist, but sometimes I do some writing. I love diving into that imagination because it helps me escape from the reality of what's going on today. And I feel like that's something.
Escapism is very important.
Yeah, it's something really good for kids to really get into. Not just kids, but just anybody in general to like just have that imagination because that's where you're gonna have your little happiness going on very soon.
And one excuse I always say, I don't read a whole lot now. I read a lot more in school. I was really big into the Percy Jackson series, actually. But one of the excuses I make, the reason why I say I don't read a lot of comic books or anything like that, is I say I don't have time. But I think of how much time I spend watching movies and playing video games, I can cut back some of that time and focus on reading because having another element to escape to is also important.
There was a huge element of that too. I just listened to Ready Player 2. And it was narrated by Will Wheaton. And it was very, very good listen, especially through Audible. And there was a lot of escapism in that too, where and that seems to be a theme. But yeah, thank y'all so much for sitting. I don't want to go too long because we do have these interviews that we need to get to. But I do want to ask y'all a question before we go. What's your favorite book, like of all time, that you can think of? It's a dangerous question.
Or series, just series.
Okay, so truth be told, I love the Alien franchise. I've been getting deep into their audiobooks because she mentioned audiobooks earlier. But even with like the Predator series, but Alien is definitely one of my favorites to just sit down and listen to when I'm actually like working because the universe just expands so much, and of course like with just space, but like the lore of the story is just phenomenal. So Yeah, I hope to one day actually work on the Alien franchise and doing like some kind of artwork for them.
That's awesome.
Okay. Mine, it's 2 books that are in this. It's only a 2-book series. Robert Reed wrote it. There was the first book, which was Morrow, and then there was The Well of Stars. Can't find audiobook versions of them. I wish I could because I'd love to listen to them again. But it was, it's an off-world adventure. They find this planet that has a planet within the planet kind of thing, and then that planet comes by and saves humanity because it's actually one big spaceship that's a planet. But it's sci-fi fantasy. It was very, very, very well done.
Nice.
But I read it when years ago when I'd taken my first career job, and then I couldn't find it after that. I was like, oh well, no, that sucks. But Robert Reed, if you're listening to this, weirdly, you have at least one fan of your 2-book series. So
for me, it's the Percy Jackson series. And
yeah,
actually,
series.
Funny enough, the reason I even started reading those is because the trailer came out for that first movie, and I was so excited by how cool the concept of that movie was. Yeah, that I went and read the books, and then I read all of the main series books before the first movie came out, and then I watched the movie and I was disappointed.
Well, yeah.
So you kick yourself in the butt for that one.
Stick to the source
yeah.
That's
I'm very excited for the Disney Plus series that they're working on.
Yeah.
Rick Riordan is actually going to be working with them for it, so I have high hopes that it's going to be just phenomenal.
Yeah. And did you tell us your favorite book?
It's actually Quartet by Tamora Pierce.
Okay.
The Lioness Quartet, and then right after that is the Wild Magic Quartet, and it's told from a point of view of fantasy, but also it focuses in on the first one being a female twin, and the male twin doesn't want to be the knight. He wants to be the monk and study, and she wants to be the knight, so she goes and she blends and becomes a knight in Linus Rampart.
Oh, that's cool.
And then the second one has to do with the girl who has what's called wild magic, which was where the Wild Magic Quartet came from. That she's more tied to animals than she is humans, and so she's learning to control it. But it's ripped between worlds, and you've got supernatural things that are coming through because there's
sounds like a collection of everything I'm a fan of.
It was awesome.
Check those out.
They're
Culmination of
amazing.
just awesomeness.
They're amazing. I still have my copies of them because I'm yes.
Well, before we wrap this up, I do want to say thank y'all for sitting down with us, and we look forward to seeing y'all for RidCon or RidgeCon if we get that name change in October. Kaz, also thank you again for all the artwork in the coloring pages that we pass out at Comic-Con. We look forward to a new one of those every year, just to kind of give out to the kids. And I guess let's get to these interviews. Fission Comics is up first. Take it away, guys. Transition. All right, continuing our conversation on literacy and indie comics and their creators, we are joined now by the Fission Comics team. What's going on, gentlemen?
Yo.
So I've talked to pretty much all 3 of y'all, I think, at this point, or at least 2 of you. So we know Cody, Isaac, me, and you have had conversations, but I know that the big thing was for this episode especially was how important literacy is, obviously. But that this team of 3 guys came up with comics, kickstarted it, and now they're out there in the world. You got Chernobor, you got Last Deacon. So I guess just introduce yourselves to the listeners, the viewers, and let us know what y'all do.
Well, I guess I'll go first. My name's Cody Harrington. Me and Isaac came up with the main concept of Chernobyl and Fission. Eventually, we brought Taylor on, and he's been helping since issue 2, right at the end of issue 1.
Yeah, pretty much.
And my main thing I do is come up with creature concepts and stuff like that, and world environments and things such that. That's pretty much my main part.
Okay.
I'm Taylor. I came in late. Really, I'm keep waving this light. Told you. Man, Isaac messaged me even way before issue 1 ever came out, and he sent me the concept. He sent me everything about it, and I freaked out. And I was just like, I'm beyond proud of you that you're doing this. This is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And so as soon as I got a chance to be like, hey, can I buy my way into this? I was like, what do I got to do to be involved? Because this is freaking awesome. So it didn't necessarily take all that, but I was excited, and I helped out with first Kickstarter, and he was so wonderful that he was like, dude, I can't believe you did what you did. So I'm going to go ahead and put your dad in this comic, because my dad passed away last year, and he was kind of a real life superhero, and was a total badass like he is in the comic now. So that's what everybody has partially to look forward to in episode or issue 2. So from there on, he kind of let me, and him and Cody let me help with the creative side as far as some new characters and kind of the flow and how we see it going, and with what my dad's character does and says and everything, because he wanted him to be authentic. So it was very cool, it was very wonderful, and then he allowed me to start having some interest in other comics. Last Deacon is incredible. He pretty much does that on his own, and it's awesome. So we just all sit in awe every time something comes out from that, and so I'm just happy to be here. Pretty much, I love comics, and this was literally a dream come true for me to be like, hey, I get to help create comics for a living now. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, we when we brought Taylor, not Tater, but when we brought Taylor on board, it was a good addition because, like you said, I write The Last Deacon, I write Chernobyl, and sometimes I get a little overwhelmed, and I can delegate a lot of concepts and direction with Chernobyl to Cody and Taylor. I can ask Cody to, hey, make me a nasty creature, come up with the Leshy Men, which are in the second issue, and then I can delegate the good guys over to Taylor and say, hey man, I need characters, one maybe that deals with explosives, one that, good, hand-to-hand combat, and Taylor came up with several characters. And the team so far is growing, and it feels good, it feels coherent, it flows really well, and I'm happy to be on a team with these two.
Definitely.
Was there any comics you guys were into when you were younger?
I recently actually got into comics about 4 years ago, ironically. But I've been reading a lot since then, but nothing really older. Most of the older stuff I've read is Aliens comics from Dark Horse and stuff, Predator comics as well. But I was never really into superhero things. That's kind of Isaac's main shtick. I'm more like sci-fi horror and stuff like that.
You got into Invincible, so.
Well, yeah,
oh, that's good.
Well, Invincible is a good comic to get interested in.
Yeah. Man, I've read comics since I was, I don't know how, 2, 3, 4 years old. Like one of my graduation gifts that was held off for me was like a X-Men 2099, and then Superman, Death of Superman, and Rebirth of Superman, all of that came out, before I was even born. And so I've read them a long time in all kind of genres and versions. I pretty much when DC, Marvel, and Image all had their own apps, and Comixology and all that, I would just have the free subscription, and if it was free, I read it. Like I almost read every single free comic they had on there. I didn't really care about the genre. They weren't all good, but I learned a lot. It was cool because it was now I realize it was kind of some research for me now to help with what we do now. So I love comics, man. I like goofy stuff. Far Side, I don't care. So it's all good with me.
Far Side.
Yeah. I freaking love Far Side. I love it. So.
Yeah, it's good we brought Taylor into the team because he kind of brings me down from where I usually write at. Like me and Cody, we love this, and don't get me wrong, Taylor loves it too. But we go all out with the gore, we go all out with the action, we hold nothing back, and I kind of take that inspiration from Invincible. But go ahead, Cody.
This give you an idea of the kind of stuff I'm into.
Oh, like Spread.
Yeah. But I like my other stuff. Right, I've been reading.
Cody kind of froze up on me there.
When Chaos Reigns.
Calling on goes to the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, that's cool.
It's pretty good concept, a lot better than I thought it would be.
Beard keeps laughing at me for waving over my head, by the way.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I've read Chernobyl 1. I remember y'all. I think y'all sent me a digital copy of it before the physical had even, I think, been printed. And I mean, this guy just
looks awesome,
right? Like, and the story was amazing. Like I read it. I had to. Unfortunately, I had to print it out on paper just so that I could have that feel of turning the pages.
We'll send you a bundle.
And it was amazing. Chernobyl 1 was really cool, and it's kind of funny too because I always have the joke when people are like, around me and they're like, "Oh, I don't like people." I'm like, "Well, it's good that I'm not a people. I'm a bear that was in the Chernobyl accident and lost all my hair and taught myself English." So, and then like years later, after I've been making that joke for years, I meet you guys, and that's essentially, this is a cyborg that's in the Chernobyl accident aftermath because there are monsters there. So that's pretty.
Look, so we're gonna have to add a naked bear to the series just to pay homage to that.
I was just gonna say, like,
bear
one of the
from
creatures,
Annihilation.
Or we'll have somebody kill one of those bear-like monsters, and then we'll shave it afterward for the hot.
Yeah, there we go.
Turned out it was actually just a human.
Right.
Robert the whole time.
I could just see like in issue number 3 where like Cody has come up with like this gigantic bearded bear that has like a beard like Gandalf. And he's just dispatched quickly by Chernobyl. Just not even a struggle.
Cameo.
He's gonna stand up on 2 feet. You shall not pass.
He gets his Illuminati cameo.
Do you have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior Cthulhu?
Yeah.
Cody always has a moment for Cthulhu.
Good Lovecraft.
Yeah.
And then Last Deacon, this was I pulled this from y'all's Facebook page. This was a snippet from the second issue, right? That's going to be coming out soon.
Well, this is actually chapter 4.
Okay.
We're packaging The Last Deacon as a volume 1, so it'll have chapters 1 through 4.
Oh, okay.
And so basically, The Last Deacon, I got into it. A lot of inspiration was Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne. I'm sure you know the genre, but that comic graphic novel, it means a lot to me. I have a lot of messages to tell in that story, and I'm trying to put it in a subtle manner, but at the same time, I believe when people read this volume that I want to see people's reactions. I want to see if they get the message I was trying to portray, and I'm not going to spoil it because if I talk about it right now, it'll kind of unravel the whole volume.
Right.
So I'm gonna see the reaction we get to that volume and see if the message got out. But there's a lot of religious undertone, and I won't go too far into that territory. But it's just a very personal story, and I can't wait for people to be able to read it.
Yeah, I think when you were describing it to me, I was like, oh, so it's kind of like Castlevania meets Assassin's Creed meets Dark Souls. And,
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a blend, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, which Castlevania,
you can toss a little Witcher in there.
Well, yeah, toss a coin to your Witcher. Oh, sorry, that is the wrong part of the show. So we talked comic books. What actual literary inspirations do y'all draw from? Like, what was some of y'all's favorite books and to read that kind of got y'all to where y'all are now telling your own stories?
Oh crap!
If it didn't have comic in front of it, I never read a book my entire life.
Dude, no,
I'm not big on books myself either.
It's really sad. No, I love books and I have read books. It's not all I have. Neil Gaiman. And I forget what it's called. Enter or something.
Sandman?
It was really great. No, I hadn't read Sandman, ironically, but
I love Sandman.
Ever read Percy Jackson?
I know. No, I never read Percy Jackson. I'm trying. I mean, I did read Tolkien. I did read Lord of the Rings.
I have a guilty pleasure of the movies.
I love Tolkien. Yes.
I'm trying to think. Like, I have a bookshelf somewhere that has my books on it, and for some reason, I don't remember what's on it right now. I mean, literally, I'm completely blank. God bless. Watchmen's, it's just phenomenal. That's been one thing that, with the writing process here has been, I like a lot of dialogue. And so some of the when we write, I'm like, can we add more dialogue here? Can we add more narration? Can we add more? I'm like, I want more words. I know it takes up less picture, but so
can we fill out this one panel with a speech bubble?
Yeah, like I just want one big speech bubble, and we're gonna tell
monologuing.
No, I'm
He
serious.
started monologuing.
Monologues would be great. I think when I read books, that's kind of my trouble. Is there's too much description of the area, and you need that for a book. I get that, but dialogue is important. Knowing what the characters are talking about. Yeah, I get that.
I wish I could remember who wrote it, but there is an X-Men trilogy of books called the Chaos Engine trilogy. That's really, really awesome and really insane. It talks about the what are they called? The Chaos Engine cubes or something. Basically, where they can reinvent all of reality, whatever they want it to be. And so, like in the first book, it's Doctor Doom. In the second book, it's Magneto. And in the third book, it's Red Skull. And so, if you've never read those, they're phenomenal.
Like Chaos Engine trilogy.
Yes, Chaos Engine
Stephen
trilogy.
They
have to be at this point. They'd have to be more than 15 years old, maybe 12.
Wow!
But they're phenomenal. Really,
I
really.
wonder
really
what
good.
that Red Skull world would be like.
It's wicked. It's dark. Like they didn't. It's not like a kid read. It's barely even a young adult read. I mean, it gets good and graphic, and there's some good stuff in it. But that was good. I sound like a total illiterate fool right now because I can't think of any books.
No, look, you named an author. That I can't do that unless it's one of the more popular ones. Like I know I read the Percy Jackson books. I read audiobooks are my thing because I work outside, so I have to listen to stuff. So like Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, all that. But the only authors I know are George R.R. Martin, J.R.R. Tolkien, and J.K. Rowling. If you ask me who wrote the Percy Jackson books, and we've done an episode on it.
Rick Riordan.
Yeah, Rick Riordan. And I couldn't tell you without being told.
But I'm passionate about those books. So
that's I even read Bram Stoker's Dracula
Dracula's my favorite.
I've read Dracula.
Yeah. I've read it like 15 times. I love it.
I actually just got done listening to Ready Player 2, and I don't remember the author's name, but I know that Will Wheaton, did the voiceover for it, the narration. Will Wheaton. But yeah, man, that's really cool. So so y'all draw, y'all all have read. It's not like y'all are just coming up with this stuff off the top of your head. You know how to tell a story, and that's important.
Recently, I read Primitive War about 2 years ago, I think, or a year ago, and it was really good. It's about Vietnam, and Russians are there, and they have a particle collider that ends up opening a rip in time and allowing dinosaurs into one of the valleys in Vietnam. And that book's really good, and they actually had a comic book that went through Indiegogo. I think it's over now.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking like
I'm picturing it.
Stranger Things meets Jurassic World meets like 3 other things. So.
Yeah, I love it. And Helldivers is another book that pretty good.
That's awesome.
Just thinking off the top of my head, I draw blanks, even though I've read books more or less. I listen to audiobooks most of the time because I just can't sit there and pay attention long enough to read.
I'm a father of 4 plus 2 jobs, technically. I cannot sit down and read a book.
I'd have to say my biggest influence is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but let's see.
Berserk.
Yeah, that's Berserk.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can't really see it on the camera. That's crazy.
I'm
gonna bring it down to show you. There we go. But nah, like Berserk was a heavy influence on The Last Deacon, and I appreciate the guy who wrote Berserk, Kentaro Miura, because when he wrote, he didn't censor anything. He didn't censor any message he had to tell. I mean, he would be as graphic and violent as possible in one chapter, and then the next chapter you got the cast of characters sitting around a fire, and it's like, this guy, he doesn't have to use shock value to tell a message, and that's what we're trying not to do over here, just violence for the sake of violence. But I think it was George R.R. Martin. Speaking of him, if I said his name right, there was a quote from him that he mentioned. He was talking about war, and that if you were gonna depict any sort of violence or any type of war battle, then when you tell the story, to respect it and be as realistic as possible. Mm-hmm. And that's what we try to do with these stories. Is if we have a message to tell, we don't want to censor it. Even if it means it gets labeled rated R, it is what it is, and we're okay with that.
Speaking of Kirkman I think has been a huge influence for all of us.
Yeah.
That's awesome, guys. Y'all are an inspiration to us. Like I said, Isaac was saying earlier that the team's growing and everything. That it sounds like y'all are almost kind of like the comic book version of us, where y'all are making comic books and we're making podcasts.
Right.
So, but it's a very similar.
What they do is a little cooler, but
yeah, well, yeah, a lot cooler in my opinion. But that's because I'm a comic book nerd.
I've always wanted to do a podcast, so
it's because of guys like you and indie creators. I mean, Stan Lee didn't start at the top. And it's because of people like you guys that
creating content for nerds to love,
and it's for amazing. That reason that we have something to talk about every other week. So
storytelling,
it's really awesome. Tell a good story and convey a message where you can. That was always kind of Stan Lee's point too.
Yep.
I was just reading the segment from his soapbox where it's like people write in all the time asking why do we have so many messages we're trying to push. It's like. That's kind of the point, right? Isn't that the point of what we're doing? I'm sorry. We're not trying to sell you timeshares here.
So I haven't read Chernobyl, but Bear at one point showed me the image of that character looking freaking badass. I'm just gonna say it. And so I do have interest in. You gotta watch that language.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I said a few already. My bad.
No. So I do have interest in reading it, but what is like the main kind of overall story and message of it?
Which you suck,
well. Oh man, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I quit writing forever.
I'm talking about
Snowboard.
Because I haven't read it.
He hadn't read it. He's trying to introduce
okay, Brian. I haven't read it either.
I'm bad at reading.
So has Project let's see. I can't speak for Taylor and Cody, but when I write, when I first started writing Chernobyl, I was going through a bit of a rough patch with depression and anxiety, and Cody knows about it. He was aware of the situation when it was going down, but it was a dark period for me, and I guess writing was my outlet. And when I write the character of Felicity, it's not. We didn't want this to be another action, blockbuster where it's just Expendables. It's not Expendables. Mm-hmm. It's about a character who deals with loss, who deals with depression, deals with guilt. He's got a little bit of PTSD. I don't have that, but I have anxiety, and it's similar in some ways, but not as bad. And so when I write the character of Alexei, I try to write the character as he's dealing with these things, and I try to make sure that I respect the topic of depression and anxiety when I write this character. That I show the real tribulations and what people go through, as I went through it myself, and millions of other people are going through it. So I think that anybody who deals with that topic, could relate to this character in some way. And the other characters that we're bringing in the cast, we want to hit a couple of other topics and get different messages out. But right now, since we're only working on issue 3 so far, that's the biggest message we can spread right now.
Okay.
I will say also, we didn't want to make Alexi a full cyborg for the main purpose that we wanted characters to be able to actually, readers to be able to actually relate to him. So that's kind of why we went with the route of having him just a cyborg instead of full-on Terminator. You know.
I mean, I get very much Cable vibes when I look at it. Cool.
Don't say the same word.
Man, let me tell you about my pet peeve.
Oh God,
I will tell you about my pet peeve. When me and Cody come up with this character, man, Cable was nowhere in my brain. I actually don't like the character Cable. I think his story, and I'm not saying my stories are great, but Cable just, man, his stories kind of bore me. You know, there's nothing really there for me. And so when we created this character, he ended up getting all kinds of people's like, hey, this is a Cable ripoff. And then I'm like, wait a minute.
Well,
I know this Cable guy. I've read comics before. Let me go check him out. And so I look at him, and then I text Cody, and I'm like, man, this is terrible. Look at this. Look how close they look. Look at this. Look at that. And then Cody's like, hey, man, calm down. It's hard to make a cyborg without them all looking the same. You know, at least you got the blue eye. At least you got separate cybernetic parts. But yeah.
Well, and we've had this conversation on the podcast, I think, before, is that, I mean, not to say, and this doesn't take away from anything y'all are doing, but there is no such thing as an original idea anymore. Everything that is created nowadays in the 21st century, it has to draw inspiration from somewhere. It's not.
People take things that they like and they apply it to things they create, and that's not a bad thing.
And if you create a character, you know, Alexi, and like you said, creating a cyborg without making him look like another famous cyborg is gonna be hard.
Right.
I mean, it's just it.
So yeah.
So yeah. We even got people so far as to say, like, you could see shots of Alexi from the waist up, and he's got like one metal arm, and they're like, "Oh, that's a Winter Soldier ripoff," and oh my gosh.
Okay, that's a big
stretch. This is Alexi. Yeah, this is Alexi.
Right.
This is Cable. This is Winter Soldier. They are all completely different.
Yep.
Okay, they have metal arms. People,
right?
Yeah, whatever.
So does Colossus.
Yes, sir. Two
of them.
But I think it's awesome, guys. I can't wait to read Last Deacon when y'all get it out. That's going to be awesome. I need to catch up on Chernobyl as well because I've only ever read the first issue. Where can our listeners and viewers find Fission Comics products?
So right now we have a website, fissioncomics.net. And right on the website, we have about 10 copies of The Last Deacon issue #1 available. And then we have our whole digital library. And I actually wanted to give a shout out real quick. We just introduced a new writer. His name is Mike. And I don't want to butcher his last name, but I think it's Euler. He created and wrote Starfell, and they actually have a series going on Kickstarter. And he joined the Fission Comics banner, and we have his comic as well listed on the website for free. His first issue is actually free. You can go download it. And we just wanted to plug him in real quick. Yeah. And that way when he watches this, he gets that shout out.
Mm-hmm. And we will make sure to put that link in the description as well for everyone to go and check out.
One thing I want to say, that Starfell book was really cool, and for us to bring it in was cool because it brought in a little bit lighter atmosphere. Both our other books are pretty graphic and pretty violent, and language and all of that. And Starfell was, it's kind of like Stranger Things meets Mars Attacks, and sure. It's exciting. There's a lot of good character development in it already in the first issue, but it's not nearly as wild and violent as our other stuff is.
Yeah, that's cool. It.
Yeah.
To tap into another medium or another group of readers would be very cool.
Okay.
Yeah, younger audience that we can reach to.
Because we plan on it.
This story, adults will love it as well.
Yeah.
True.
Right. We plan on hitting different age groups and whatnot, but right now it's when you're starting early and it's like, okay, we got to get deep into these first couple books before we can take a break and start developing some of our other projects. Because
it's hard to switch from dark humor to family friendly, like you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because each one of us has at least another probably 2 or 3 books that we've actually started putting stuff down for. It'd be too much to go ahead and start putting them into production. So there's a lot to come, a lot of really cool, exciting stuff. So.
That's awesome.
Well, if y'all don't have anything else, guys, we really appreciate y'all sitting down with us for this interview. And if y'all need any help from the Bearded Bear team at all, y'all need us to share something or anything like that, even hit y'all up on Kickstarter. I mean, I'm a little broke right now, but you know, if y'all need any help from us in the future, y'all let us know, and we look forward to seeing what y'all come up with in the future for sure.
Well, we thank y'all for letting us come on and talk about it.
Thank you for having us.
Oh yeah, definitely.
With you.
Happy
Let's get
Juneteenth and Father's Day.
Oh yeah, those were like last month because I forgot we're recording this way in advance.
Right? Yeah.
But hope you had a good Father's Day. Hope we had fun at Mississippi Comic Con as well.
Oh yeah,
I hope we did. Yeah.
So,
I know we did.
But yeah, guys, we'll hit y'all back later. And in the meantime, let's get out of here and get back to the episode. All right. Thanks, Fission Comics team. Really appreciated y'all sitting down with us. Check out their comic books, Chernoborg and The Last Deacon, as they talked about in the interview. So, oh yeah, Jay's got something.
I know
right
what I'm reading tonight.
I still have to read Chernborg. I want to read that
such
so
good
bad.
comics. They're really good. All of their links are in the description where you can go and help fund them, where you can go and find them. Facebook, all the places, everything. So
all the
definitely,
links.
Yeah, check them out. Our next interview is a comic creator. He created the Endangered comic series. We've taken to call him an Endangered John. And he had a lot to say about the creative process. And I think Josh actually got a good question in. Our friend from Knights of the Nerds Table was here for this one. I may be wrong. I don't know. Go watch the interview and find out.
Transition.
What's going on, everybody? Continuing the conversation on literacy and indie comic creators and indie writers. We're joined not only by familiar faces, Ori from the Voice of Geeky Vengeance and Josh from the Knights of the Nerds Table. We are joined by our very special guest, Mr. Jon McCarthy, everybody. Author of Hard Roll and the Endangered comic book series. And I'm sure there's other cool stuff out there that John's working on. And so just like with our other interview that we did with Fission Comics, pretty much what this is just for you to let us know creative process, what books you read, what comics you used to read, all that good stuff. But, first, I guess, just tell everybody who you are.
Hey, man. But first, thank you guys for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. I'm Jon McCarthy. I am, as mentioned in the wonderful prelude there, the writer of a nonfiction book titled Hard Roll, Paramedic Perspective of Life and Death in New Orleans. I did a children's book called, I can't remember the title of it. It's either Goodbye Bad Dreams or Night Night Bad Dreams. One of those was taken and we had to go with the other one. So one of those, it's on Amazon. I forgot the title of it.
It's like how we got Ghostbusters as an official title for the Ghostbusters films. One of them was taken. We got to figure out which one we're going to use.
Exactly. And most recently, the Endangered comic book series that just kind of dropped and is going to be hopefully dropping out monthly here for the rest of this year.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Ori looking like she has some opinions over there.
Ori is a super
we both
McCarthy
love it.
fangirl.
Okay, hold on. The first issue is amazing. And at the time of this recording, he dropped issue 2 in my lap for a preview today.
I
can't even look at him right now because I
haven't read it.
And I know you guys just got it too, but when you guys read it, we're gonna all puddle together and cry. That's how this is gonna go.
I was doing a signing, and she was like, "Well, where's my issue 2 to review?" And I was like, all right, I warned you ahead of time. So I hit her today. I was like, you ready for this? She was like, yes. I sent it to her, and it has some moments in it for sure. Yeah, I think that
if for no other reason, the Starship Trooper-esque cover of issue 2 is very, very awesome. I haven't read it yet, but that's really cool.
Yeah, that's a purposeful homage that we did to that movie. It was one of the movies, when I pitched this book to the publisher, I referenced, they want to know what is it like, what's it similar to that people of this would like, and it was pretty aliens without the xenomorphs, without the zombies, and Starship Troopers without the cheesy. So those were my 3 go-tos. And of those 3, Starship Troopers was probably the best one to kind of homage, because the other 2 pretty generic, really. So we decided to go with issue 2 of the Starship Troopers homage. We ran out of time on this one, so there wasn't a variant out. Issue 1 had the Transformer comic book variant that we did for it. And with the distributor, we kind of ran out of time to put a variant in their catalog, so we just chose to just go with just the issue 2 with that cover. But fortunately, it's a pretty cool cover, I think, and hopefully people, especially Starship Troopers fans, will dig it.
Yeah.
It's very fitting. It fits it perfectly.
Yeah. But to kind of go back to what you originally asking about with I grew up right outside of Tallahassee, Florida, a little town called Crawfordville, Florida, small town. Back in the late 70s and the mid 80s was kind of my childhood era. And coming up, we didn't have a whole lot of money, So I found pretty early on that comic books were an affordable way for me. I was obsessed with that era put out so much great pop culture content, from music to movies to comic books to cartoons. I mean, really everything that everybody is into today, you can pretty easily back to some origin from that era, really. So, going to the movies for us was a pretty special treat, because it wasn't expensive back then, but at the time, relatively, it was a little pricey. So comics, man, I really got into comic books pretty heavily. I have an uncle, my mom's youngest brother, I think he's around 10 to 12 years older than I am. So he was kind of in that teenage era when I was a little kid. So he naturally had tons of comics laying around that I would just pick up and read. And then one of our best sources of entertainment was there's a big flea market there. It's still there to this day in Tallahassee. But I've told this story before, but there was this older Spanish guy back in the early 80s who had a booth there. And he had nothing but comics. Long boxes full of this old comic. Back in that era, the collector thing was nowhere. It really almost did. I won't say it didn't exist, but it was not very popular at the time. Nothing like this. So you could go get these old books for nothing. I would go in there and get 4 of them for $1. It's a quarter piece, like Silver Age Fantastic Four books that are today probably $50 to up to 4 figures. The ones I was reading for a quarter piece back then, just that it blended perfectly with that. I want to say escapism, because I was a kid and I had an awesome childhood, so I really wasn't trying to escape from anything, but that ability to kind of transport myself into another world,
Oh yeah.
And because back then too, with television, you had really 3 channels to watch, and if there wasn't something cool on, well, shit, man, spent a lot of time outside. Usually, comics were my go-to, and I turned to them, and just to kind of explore all of that fun fantasy, otherworldly, crazy stuff. Fantastic Four was a big thing of mine. So, all of that cosmic, crazy, worlds and aliens. Yeah, all that fun stuff. And I mean, probably, I would say, as far as literacy power, man, I would say comic books and Sesame Street probably taught me more how to read and just appreciate and build my imagination. Elementary school, in hindsight, so they've always had a special place in my heart. And it's always been a medium that I really wanted to kind of do my stories in. Honestly, I did that book that I wrote, Hard Roll. That came after a few years of me trying to break into comics with scripts, contacting just cold pitching to publishers and not really getting anywhere and getting good feedback, but not really kind of breaking through on anything like that. I kind of took a break and I was like, man, I'm spending a lot of time writing a lot of stories and, shit, and nobody's ever going to see these things. What do I need to do to fix this? And when you start studying writing, the first is write what you know. It's like number one golden rule of write what you know. Well, I'm a paramedic. And at the time, I was a paramedic for the city of New Orleans, which is a pretty wild place to be a paramedic, and so I was like, okay, I can write what I know. I know this is what I'm doing every day. And, maybe there'll be an interest in some of these like wild or crazier stories and things that I've experienced. And so I decided to start on that book, and that eventually got me a publishing contract. That was what, I was really wanted. One of the things that I was pursuing was that to become a published author. I had been a self-published author before Hard Roll when I made my comic book back in like 2009. And the world of comics as that level of indie creator with that everything on your own, true like punk rock style, of promoting, hustling and all that, which is incredibly important like for a creator to have that experience, but it's not one that I want to have again.
Like you were walking into the comic book store with like a stack of 5 of your comics and just leaving it on the shelf and then walking out hoping you weren't going to get found out.
I told the story the other day. I'm like, when you're in that mode, you're almost like, spare some change.
Right.
Basically,
one more bowl of soup.
And they're like, yeah,
we'll write good dialogue for money.
They're like, we'll let you put some on the shelf for consignment, if they sell, come back in a week and we'll give you 70 cents. That's your share of this book or whatever, so, but it was, like I said, man, I really feel like, especially if anyone's listening to this that has any aspiration of reading a comic book, there's more value in that experience. It can be a little bit painful and not necessarily humiliating, but it's kind of like if you're in a band, I don't think there's probably any famous like band out there who ever just cut their first demo and then next thing you know, they're massively popular. You gain a lot of experience from that hustle, that learn things the hard way, how everything works, and how to deal with retailers and how to interact with people who might be into your stuff. And, it's really valuable. I did it. But from that point, I was like, I'm trying to shoot for something here, And after doing comics for a few years and not really getting anywhere, I decided to focus on that book thing and write what I know. And that landed me the book contract. That was in, I think, 2016 or 2017, that book came out. And part of the contract with the publisher was I had to offer them whatever I did next, the first right to refuse it. So I immediately finished that book and went into writing a whole second book. That was probably, it's like 70, 80,000 words, a lot for a book. Yep. And spent a few years on that, and then for the publisher to pass on, and release me from my contract, which was good. Helped me to say, all right, I'm kind of done with that side of the literary world. I really want to go back to what I wanted to be in the first place, which was comics. So I was like, I've now got a little key, it's a locked door to kind of get into this world. And comics is a little bit easier, but because anyone can really do comics with crowdfunding and things like that. Now you can kind of get into it, but that wasn't the direction I wanted to go. So I'm like, okay, I have this published author thing behind my name now, which is a small key that'll maybe get some people to take me a little bit more seriously. And so I had all these stories that I'd already written, and Endangered was one that was just kind of on my hard drive. It was one that I liked a lot. I have some that are like, I know need a little bit of pop, too niche to kind of, that I maybe could do something with later on down the line. And I had some that were like more of a broader appeal, I feel like. And I was like, which one of these do I want to see come to life first, And I felt like the other ones, some of them are probably better stories than Endangered, but I felt like this was a fun one that I really wanted to do because it's the kind of comic book that I like. One of the types of comics. And so we just did it, man. I say we just did it. Honestly, the true story Ori met, Nate, my business partner, I guess you'd call him Nathan, was in town. He's from Arkansas. He flew in to sign this. And fortunately, comic books are expensive to right? I mean, as a writer, you have an art team on it. And going back to the Hungry for Ink days, that book I did myself back in like 2009, that was with an amateur artist who was talented, but it was frustrating because it was like a lot of times amateur artists think that they can produce things in a certain way until it comes time to start doing it, and then they don't. And then there's a lot of flaking out and stuff like that goes on, and it's really annoying after a while when you're trying to be like serious and they're not quite taking it as serious as you are, like sitting around smoking weed or whatever, like, hey man, yeah, I'm gonna get to it tomorrow, dude. And then it's like 2 weeks later and you're like, where's the page? Oh man, I meant to do it, So I was like, going forward, that was the other line I drew in the sand. I was like, going forward, I do another comic book unless I can get someone on board to either get an artist that likes it enough to want to partner with me as like a 50-50 IP partner, or have somebody to back it. And fortunately, my friend Nathan read it and liked it enough. He said, hey man, I'm interested in maybe investing in this. And so he and I partnered up, because the problem with a professional artist is art is what they do for a living. Like, I can be paramedic and write, it takes, not dismissing the importance or the amount of effort that goes into writing a story, because it takes a lot. But in reality, is you can be a writer and have a job, But when you're an artist, it takes so much to do that artwork, even for that's what they do for a living. So if you want them to do your book, you have to be willing to pay them so that they can pay their rent and buy groceries and other stuff like the rest of us do with our day jobs. That is their day job, And that was the kind of artist that I wanted to work with. Fortunately, Nathan came on board and backed the money up, and then we went out and found Ron Joseph, the penciler, on this book, and then with Ron was on board, then we found the rest of the team after him. So
that's awesome.
I probably got off the original question, but
it's all surrounding. Yeah, you're actually answering all the questions right there. That was awesome.
Yeah. So as far as literacy goes, I think. I mean, listen, the men are still out there. They're more expensive. The digital versions now, or trade paperbacks, or things like that, where they're more collected, that don't have that individual value of the Silver Age comic book. So Brian. Like, yeah, well, that's what I tell parents to this day, man. I'm like, get your kids to read comics. I mean, it's beside it being just an awesome hobby with a bunch of cool people around, associated with it for the most part. It's a really good way to learn how to read. It's like if you're trying to learn a foreign language. If I sat down and tried to learn Japanese, it'd be really difficult for me. I pick up a lot of Japanese watching anime, just in passing. It's that same kind of correlation. Like if it's something you're interested in, you more like if you don't know how to read and you're looking at, and you see those word balloons, you're like, man, Spider-Man's saying something here. I really like to know what he's saying. Make more of an, work out what's being said, as opposed to like, here's your reader book for second grade class. Learn how to read. Whatever it is they're learning how. They're not going to be as interested.
It's got to be passion behind it for sure.
Yeah. Right. I still to this day recommend comics, man, for people, young children, especially, to learn how to read. So it's a great tool for that. It has played a big part in my. And again, the other great thing about that is it not only do you learn how to read, but it also really fires off a part of your brain where that imagination lives. Growing up, we didn't have a whole ton of money, so it was a rare occasion figure, like Star Wars had come out. I was like 5 years old, so those action figures are popping. And then, in the early 80s, mid 80s, it's He-Man and G.I. Joes and all these toys that we could occasionally get one. We could never afford like Castle Grayskull. We would have me and my brother I'd have like Skeletor, and he'd have He-Man. So we'd have to go out in the yard and basically put a bunch of rocks in a pile, and that was Castle Grayskull. But I remember vividly in my mind as a kid, man, like imagination, like that was just real. We were really controlling He-Man and Skeletor in a pile of rocks in our yard, but in my imagination, that was like as real as I was in the cartoon, So,
oh yeah,
comics do stuff too. It fires off that part, and it creates imagination. It's incredibly important for anything.
I have to completely agree because I'm one of those, like, I don't think, like, the first book series I actually remember physically reading was the Harry Potter series that J.K. Rowling wrote.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact, I can testify that there's no way I would have been able to imagine those landscapes, imagine, you know, how Hogwarts looked and how the characters looked and all that without reading comics first. Comics was first for me, and then I got into books, you know, other than the ones that they made me read for, you know, school.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it you're right. It does fire off that imagination kind of level.
It's really good for that too, but a little harder to get into stuff like that when you're young, you know. That's like a teenager era thing, but you know, but yeah, I agree with you completely. Like it makes all of that a lot more interesting. You have a well-formed imagination of where you can kind of vividly create those worlds in your head, and you're interested in that kind of stuff. So all of that stuff at an early age, I feel like is important because, listen, I'm kind of weird on it too because I'm a big fan of like kids watching horror movies. Like a lot of people are like, you know, no, they shouldn't do that. But I'm like, listen, it's safe, right? Freddy Krueger is not going to murder your child literally, you know. So the kid's going to get scared, right? But that also, I feel like, powers up your imagination. You have to have a good imagination to imagine a monster, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? So I'm always like, hey, man, let them watch horror movies. I watched them growing up young. My parents inappropriately let me watch like The Exorcist. I was probably like freaking 7 years old when I watched that movie.
I feel like this explains so much of your personality. I'm coming from this as your friend.
No doubt. That's why I was loving when I see these kids were reading in like, you know, I have to like formally say like this is not for children. You know, there's some bad language and stuff like that, but there's no like sexuality in it at all. It's more like violence, you know, people's heads blowing off. And
it's calmer than GTA 5. Let's be serious.
100%.
1000%.
Yeah.
But I see their parents are like, oh yeah, they're fine. You know, they know the language and stuff like that. I'm like, awesome. You know, I love it. You know, I could never recommend it for like young children, but so far the ones that have read it have really liked it. So that's always pretty cool, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in here if that's all right.
I was just fixing to say, you're the other father in here. What do you think about letting the kids watch the horror movies?
I was just gonna. I had a couple of questions I wanted to ask, but I can respond to that. So I personally hate horror movies. So we'll go ahead and start off with that. I love coming on this show because I feel like I get to just have these opinions that 99% of the other people on the show don't agree with. But I think. Yeah.
We're not going to judge you on screen at all.
That's okay.
Do you hate because your parents let you watch them at a young age?
No, I hate them because they're boring.
Yes,
I don't care for them. For me, it's like there's a few that are good. There are a few that I've seen that I was like, okay, you know what, that was kind of good. Some of them,
the iconic
I tend to lean more towards like thriller. Like if it makes me think and if it makes me wonder, then I'm more apt to be into it. But if it's just this guy has a chainsaw and everybody is going to die, and we're just going to figure out which body part they cut off first with the chainsaw, that's the only thing that changes.
I feel like you haven't given Texas Chainsaw Massacre enough watch because there's some good psychology there. I'm just saying.
I love The Lighthouse.
That was just an example. That's the thing. Like it's pretty quickly like when those movies come on or I see them, I'm like,
love it.
You know what? This isn't for me. So as far as what I will watch with my daughter and my future kids, probably not those movies, probably other movies. Now, that's not to say that if they show an interest in certain movies that I will say no. They obviously don't have to share all the same interests as me. My main point is that I personally don't like horror movies, so I'm not going to watch them. But if, like I said, if that's something that my kids down the road, if they show an interest, I'm certain.
As long as they like Spider-Man, it's okay.
Yeah.
If your kids like horror movies, send them to Auntie Ori and to Nerd Squatch. And
Cecilia is literally wearing Spider-Man pajamas right now, just so right now, this very moment.
I'm the
She
one that
was.
read American Psycho at 17, so
Well, there you
send them to us. Send them
We
to
got
us.
this.
So, anyways, horror movies aside, I do want to jump into a couple of the questions I had. I have two questions that I really want to ask you, but I'll do them one at a time just to make it so it's a little easier for you to answer, so you're not, going all over the place. So my first question is, at what point in your career, or have you hit this yet, where you feel like you did it, like you made it, like I am a professional comic book writer, I'm a professional creator? What point was like, I'm here, not that you've reached the pinnacle of where you would like to be, but you've reached a point to where you can you feel good about it. Like it was a huge milestone where it was like, I can do this. Like, this isn't just a pipe dream.
Yeah. I feel like, honestly, man, I think everybody that creates anything, at least everyone that I've ever talked to, when they're being honest, are insecure on some level. And you have universally share a bit of an imposter syndrome. Like, I'm friends with Derek Robertson, right? He's the artist and co-creator of The Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Super successful, right? I mean, everybody knows that show. The comic was a hit. He's done 1 million comics over the years. He still to this day feels like his art sucks, and I'm like, man, so to kind of answer that question, I feel good, whenever when I did the script and I pitched it initially to I think it was about 8 publishers. And the kind of crappy part of comic books, that's why you kind of have to have thick skin to do it, is the rejection comes in the form of not usually a direct no. It comes in the form of like, thanks for sending it. If we like it, you'll hear back from us at some point. We don't know when that point will be. And if we don't, you won't. And you might wait forever. So, it's screaming into the void a lot. So the moment that I pitched it and then had a publisher actually respond well enough to it and say, yeah, hey man, we like this, I was like, okay, cool. That was a rewarding feeling. The most what you're speaking of, I feel like that I've gotten is honestly since this issue 1 came out, because the people who had read it prior to its release had given me good feedback, and I've written writing long enough where I'm pretty good at differentiating my own stuff. Like, I can disassociate myself from the fact that it's my writing, tell when it's good or when it's not good, and so with issue 1, I was a little bit worried. I was like, I like this. I feel that it's good. It was my first shot at like a science fiction type story that I'd ever written. So I was like, man, it's a lot of exposition. And I'm like, I have to put it in here, but is it too much? So I was a little bit unsure. So once the issue came out, I get some feedback from people who I don't know who were like, oh, we've been getting a lot of that lately, which is really awesome. And this is super fun read, and we're looking forward to this series, and everybody will be on the lookout for it and stuff. That really feels awesome. But as far as like feeling like I've made it, I definitely don't feel that way now. To be quite honest with you, I don't really want to ever probably feel like that, because I feel I don't have a chip on my shoulder or anything like that, but I do feel hungry to cliche. I have a lot of stories that I want to tell, and hopefully they continue to do well enough. My only goal is to have each one do well enough to afford me the opportunity to do more of them, And I'm with this book, like I said, Nathan, partner on this, he's put a lot of money into these, for this art and stuff. So, and it hasn't, we haven't even really started seeing any money come back from the business side of it. It's been received well. And that's, for me, as the creator and the writer, I'm like, that's freaking awesome. But me as the business partner for him, you have to kind of look at it in that sense as well. It's a long way away from being successful.
Yeah.
So I'm not motivated by money, As a matter of fact, our deal with him, as I told him, we have an IP split, an ownership split, when money does start coming back in. And I told him, it's going to all go back to you, dude, until, you back. Which is probably not going to happen, to be quite honest with you, but you never know. It's possible. But then just to kind of keep funneling the book. So I don't know if will ever feel like, man, I made it, I have like certain things that I want to achieve, like I want to one day, I've been going to San Diego Comic-Con since like 2009. I love that convention. I go out there and it like recharges my creative batteries because I'm around like 200,000 people who are into the same kind of stuff that I am, or who are passionate for like nerdy stuff, which I love myself.
Yeah.
But being out there one day and being invited out there to as a guest would be a milestone that I'd like to hit one day, because I feel like that's a different level, like, you know, your standard creators. That kind of stuff are fine. I don't really care that much about that kind of stuff. I'm really, and I say this on the Instagram page where I do most of the promotion for Endangered, is like, what I care the most about are people who are into actual comic books, who actually read comics and stuff, who like it. That means more. That means a lot to me, because that's who it was made for, was to create, to entertain those people, and to see that working. You know, I mean, so far, fingers crossed, I haven't had anybody being like, "Man, this sucks, dude. Don't waste your time with stupid."
Issue 2.
Yeah.
Issue 2. No,
For a totally different reason, other than it's bad. It's not bad. It just sucks.
Oh
no. Or he's just over here in the "don't quit your day job, John."
Oh no.
No, it's a great issue, but Jesus, just everything. I called my therapist. That's how bad it was.
Yeah,
like he thinks I'm joking. I'm not joking.
Yeah, it hits hard at times, especially some of the characters that people love. But, you know, it's the funnest part of it, man. And it's kind of like, you write the story and I'm like, I love these characters and I want the reader to like this character more than this character. And, you know, it's like writing tools. And whenever I do that and it works, like it's pejorative to say like manipulate a reader, because sounds crappy and that's not the goal, but to kind of be able to write it and tell the story with the art involved, you know, because it's unlike a novel where it's just my words. You know, I'm just a part of this. I come up with the ideas and give the scripts with the rest of the team, and they have to visually interpret it, which is, in comics, honestly, is probably more important than the story, as far as keeping the reader flowing through the panels and all that has to be laid out right. But just to get that feedback that's been positive so far is really nice. I mean, there's probably people that don't like it, I'm sure, but they're going to be reaching out most likely and be like, "Man, this sucks." They just won't hear from them, you know?
Yeah.
Good.
The ones that I'm hearing from and getting that feedback is probably as satisfying to me to be for this book, to give me that kind of feeling. I think that you're probably the big answer to your question. I don't know if there'll ever be a thing where I'm like, "Man, I made it," you know, because there's always in the back of my mind is that imposter syndrome. Like, you know, man, do I really deserve to be in this world? Am I as good as guys? Can I tell? Because you're not really competing with anyone. I mean, you're competing for dollars for the readers, but like the big writers, the Donnie Cates, the James Tynans, and the Kieran Gillens, and those guys, I'm not competing with them. They're not, you know, they're telling their story. I'm telling my story, but you want to be taken seriously, I guess, or viewed as a comic creator. Like, it's like a legitimacy thing, you know?
Yeah.
I don't ever take to be like, I've been welcomed. You know what I mean? Derek viewed issue 1, Derek Roberts. He loved it, you know, and we've had some of those guys who given me that feedback, was like, "Yeah, this is good." But immediately in my mind, like I said, that's the insecurity of being creative that I've ever known, is in the back of your mind, like, "Oh, they probably really think it sucks ass and they're just being nice to me." You know, that's how your brain works. But everybody I know has done that, man.
You're always going to be your own worst critic. Yeah.
Yeah. But for a while, I was an actor, man. And I did movies with like movie stars, like famous people. And they have the same thing. Like, you know, I'm like, "You're rich from this. How can you think it suck?" You know, and they're like, "Well, you know, I just got lucky," you know, that kind of thing. So I've accepted that that's normal. It's a little easier to swallow. No, everyone suffers from the same thing, but I don't know if there's ever be one thing where I'm like, there, you know, like clouds on top, the sun shines on. You know, I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Yeah. So for my last question, this will be, I guess I'll challenge you a little bit, or at least I'll try to.
Okay.
So all of us here are creative people, I would say, for sure. I know these guys well enough to know that they're creative.
We have different platforms. The first night is going to challenge someone on our show? Like, that hasn't happened before.
That's Jim Hart.
we're all creative in different ways, whether we're on YouTube and we're trying to create content, or some of us create art, some of us do video editing, things like that. And we enjoy this creation, and we've all gone on our own journey. We've had good things, bad things, highs, lows, etc. And you've touched on this already in many different ways, but I really want to try and boil it down, if you could, to one thing. What would be your one piece of advice that you would give to any artist, not even necessarily just a comic book artist, but anybody in general? You've thrown a few things out there, like how you didn't make it about money and how it's, write what you know, things like that. Like you've given a few pieces, but is there one thing that you feel like if you could hone in on, boil it down, and just tell anybody who's watching this and us who are here with you and are our creative people, what do you want to say to those people and us that will help us hopefully, fight through the low times? And like, what would that advice be?
Actually easy for me, man. I think that would be don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, my personal theory is, and I've told this to my children, they're grown up now.
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe that anyone can do anything that they want to do within the possibilities of physics.
Mm-hmm.
Or all, you can possibly play in the NBA, but it's probably not going to happen. But
Mm-hmm.
but for creatives, you can set these goals, and I say set big goals, man. But I think what I personally believe is that, and this is not a religious thing or whatever, I just truly believe this to be the case. I feel like the bigger your are, it's possible. To accomplish that, the bigger your goal is, the more hurdles are going to be put in front of you. Because if it's easy, like if you have a small goal, it's going to be easy to accomplish because you're not going to have that many hurdles in you. But if you say, I want to be whatever,
Yeah.
you got, I want
to be the very
best. No one ever was.
You guys are like, we got the best, the highest rated YouTube show on YouTube. We want to have the most followers, the most subscribers, or whatever. You can do it. It's possible. But there's a lot of obstacles to accomplish that. But if and
one of those is taking Joe Rogan down a peg. But yeah.
But the more you want to do, the more the universe is going to test that resolve and truly see whether you're worthy of accomplishing the goal that you want to do. And you have to take the adversity, and you have to take the no's, and you have to take this train throwing off the tracks. So it's going to happen, especially if your goal is, or your aspirations or your ambitions are large.
Yeah.
But I 100% believe with everything inside of me that if you stay the course and you've maintained that focus and that desire to do that goal, you can do it. 100%. That would be my goal to anybody is don't give up. I know that's cliche, but until you set off on whatever path it is that you're doing creatively, you're not going to know what I'm talking about, but you'll quickly know what I'm talking about because you're going to start hitting those. It's going to get thrown at you. I mean, it's you. And I've come to that realization. I think I'm a big fan of watching like documentaries on anybody that's like anyone that, and what I've found is like anyone that you've ever heard their name. And I've watched like documentaries on like Ben and Jerry's and the guys that created jelly beans and stuff like that. Or most musicians, movie stars, like, those people ran that gauntlet. They've had to go through this. They've all been rejected. They've all been, they've all experienced it, but they've all had like this locked in, mindset. Like, I will not give up on this goal, almost like you have to be a professional athlete, really. And it's because that's a big goal, but to reach that goal, you have to have that drive because you're going to encounter all of this. Again, the universe is going to throw all this stuff at you.
Yeah.
And it's just, I believe that it's just to really test, like, do you really want this? Let's see how you really want it because you want something really big. And this goes with the classic saying that if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yep.
So,
if you want it, you'll try. If you don't try, then you didn't want it.
Right. And I think like if you really want it and you don't give up, I truly believe, I think you can do in any do it in if you're but you really have to be like, that's really what, it has to be inside of you. It has to be a fire that will not be put out by rejection and no's and this sucks and that, you have to just force, man, because you have to, you're like, I'm going to get better. And then you just, keep working at it and eventually you'll get there. I do believe that. I've been doing this now, dude, I've been on the path to like write for like seriously writing. I really started studying it in probably like 2001, 2002. 2016, I signed a book or 2015, I signed a book contract, and so that's a long time, but that's pretty standard, really, this type of thing. Occasionally there's the stars align for them and it just, happens for them really fast. But most people who do anything of note have to put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, a lot of work to get that, And my big motivation is for my kids, man, because where I grew up, and just to kind of spin off of your question, where I grew up out in that part of Florida, the goal, the dream was like you get a job with like the state or the government that's like secure with benefits and you retire in 25 years. And even as a kid, that never appealed to me. I was that whole like work hard and give up your youth and go without. And then when you're old, you can enjoy it. That was never my thing, but like anything creative was never really nurtured seriously. And it was never like a legit. I want to be a writer, if you went into a career day and like, what do you want to do? And like, I want to be a writer. They're like, what, like newspaper? Like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen,
They decide what sounds realistic and what doesn't. Yeah.
That was never like nurtured in me, and I don't begrudge anyone for it. It's just how it was. So I was really the opposite with my kids, man. I'm like, you guys can do whatever you want. I will support you. I don't give a shit how crazy it is. I'm here for it. My youngest son, for example, he's 18 years old. And he wanted to work in video games. He wants to create video games. That was his thing. And I've nurtured that as best as I could. And now he's got a full scholarship to ULL, Lafayette, Louisiana, fall, and he's majoring in computer animation or some video game degree field that he wants to do. And
awesome.
I told him, I was like, I'm sure you're going to kill him. My oldest son, for some reason, is obsessed with like special forces. He wants to be in the special forces in the military. I'm a veteran, but I was in the Coast Guard. I was no freaking special forces, nothing. But he's obsessed with it, and he's been training for like 2 years. The kid's like, it's ridiculous how good a shape he's in, But if that's what you want to do, man, I'm going to support you for it and just chase your dreams, and you can do it. And that's what I told you guys. The same thing I've told them, and it's possible,
What's the Shia LaBeouf quote? Don't let your dreams be dreams.
Just do it.
That's true, man.
And to quote Andy Samberg, never stop stopping.
Well, and the story I always hear from a lot of celebrities in some of their documentaries of when they actually make it, usually their big break comes the day after they feel like giving up.
Yeah.
And they were going to give up.
Paul Bettany.
Because they've been eating it for years, that rejection, and never get. I just watched one recently on Kanye West, man. I was never really a huge fan of his music, but I watched this documentary and I was like, bro, everybody like super freaking famous, but he wasn't always that,
No, he was a kid with a backpack that ended up at a party.
Yeah, you go back and watch his story, and it's like, even this guy dealt with it. It's Jack Kirby from most people from comics are like that, and a lot of musicians are like that. Just the story is too common if you pay attention. The theme is very much the same, and the result is there. So you know that this is the trials and tribulations because everyone has to pay them. You see they're in all these stories. But if you stick with it, it will work out in the end. For some people, it might take a lot longer than it does for others, but I do firmly believe you can do it if you don't give up. I really believe it.
Absolutely.
Well, we are running short on time here. Does anyone have anything else? Ori, you want to, yell at John a little more about the issue too?
So, I I was one of the people he approached to write a review for Endangered. It was shortly after we met. Our mutual friend of ours, Robbie Musso, had posted up about it, and I was like, okay, this looks like it might be good. I love Starship Troopers. Next thing you know, I get an advanced copy of the issue 1 in my inbox, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. And it was really good. I don't read comics. I'm not a big comic person. I work with comic book artists. I work with writers. I work with all kinds of stuff. But this was like the second or third comic I'd ever gotten where like, you can read the comic. And I was like, yay! I read the first issue and I was hooked. Like, I love the characters, the pacing, the art. Ron Joseph, I love you so much. And of course, our friend Robbie had done the alternate cover for it. And I was like, okay, I'm sold on this first issue. And John and I became friends. I don't know how well I can use that term right now because I'm so mad at him. But
frenemies.
We're frenemies. No, we're not frenemies. We're on the outs. He's got to make it up to me. I've got ways, John. I'll send them to you in an email. But and then, you know, I want to say everything that you've gone through up until this point, like it has brought you to me. You've made it in my eyes. If you want to make me do something that I've never really liked doing in the first place, I have ADHD. I get lost in the pictures, and you made me sit down and read a whole comic on my phone. That's how good it was.
Me too.
That's
Dude, amazing.
That's the kind of stuff right there that means honestly the most to me about this type of book. You know, with Hard Roll, it was a book that eventually became a lot about like PTSD and first responders and the effects of that type of work do it. And to hear back from, you know, the book never sold that many copies. You know, Hard Roll, Endangered issue 1 came out and sold more issues than sold since it existed. You know, but to hear from it. It's not really the most important thing to me. The most important thing is like what Ori said. I mean, that's super, super kind words. You know, that's more important to me than any kind of like award I could ever get for like, oh, here's your whatever award for the comic. I mean, that kind of stuff's fine, but I don't really care about it. The goal is to entertain people. And, you know, she enjoyed it. You know,
yeah, it's entertaining. And issue 2 is, it sucks.
Let me tell my side. I wrote issue 1 and she fell in love with some of the characters. I told her in there, be careful which characters you love because they're coming to Earth. They're full of spiders the size of SUVs. So something bad is probably at some point.
I was okay until like a certain panel.
It did. And I told her it was coming. So issue 2 is they come to Earth. That's, you know, issue 1 is that sets the whole thing up. And issue 2 is what everybody's been wanting to buy this book about. You know, when you hear, oh, this is a book about big bugs and stuff. Well, that's what issue 2 is really.
Issue 2 is big bugs.
Yeah. It kicks it in. That's what everybody kind of, you know, came to the party for, you know, but it's
a party.
It's a world that's not safe, you know. So, George R.R. Martin,
I kind of feel like first 5 minutes of Suicide Squad are going to happen to me, and I really don't like that feeling.
Yes.
I now get to go in learning about these characters to know that this is going to happen. Right. I wonder, is it this one?
I'm going to retract my long cosplayer review. I'm going to retract it. No, I'm kidding.
It's an amazing comic. You guys are going to love it. Josh, I'll make sure you get copies of it after this.
Absolutely. I love it.
That if you read issue 1 and you like issue 1, like I said, that's getting you into the story, but that's not what you really came to this for. I don't feel like issue 2 is what you came to this story. So, I love it. I think it's super fun. And then the third one is even wilder than this one. It's a fun story to tell. You know, it's a story to tell. And I have to do it in 8 issues. That's what it was originally supposed to be an ongoing series. So these big events, you know, it's just kind of fun now that I have to everything, right, you know, a little more. So you get a lot more stuff like in one issue. Things are happening.
When it gets optioned for a TV series,
we'll see. We'll cross that bridge.
Just make sure the Bear and the Beard and all their friends are casted as podcasters talking about the big bugs coming to Earth.
Newscasters.
I'll never where I came from. If that ever happens, I promise you, I'll never forget. I'm not going to be that guy. You know.
I'll remind him. I'll be like, John, you promised. We have video evidence.
Hunt me down. Yeah.
So for our viewers and our listeners, before we wrap it up here, it is Mass Casualty Comics. Is that correct?
No, not really.
No. Okay, I have some outdated information from the Facebook page. So
back in the old days of the Hungry for the first self-published comic book era, just a quick story on that. I had these aspirations. I'm going to make this comic, and I'm going to start my own publishing company. Yeah, do it myself. That was Mass Casualty Comics. It lasted one issue of that comic book, and then but I create all this social media stuff around it. So, like my Twitter name is still John Mass Casualty, but I just maybe someday I'll bring Mass Casualty back. But no, Blood Moon Comics did Endangered. Blood Moon Comics.
Blood Moon. Okay. Yeah. And we'll have all those links in the description so that our viewers and listeners can go and check out Endangered. Go search for a copy of Hard Roll. They got to be out there somewhere, right?
They are.
If you need it.
Usually in bathrooms everywhere.
we'll have all of John's social media links and all that in the episode as well, as always, along with Ori's and Josh's for this episode specifically. And John, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us about this. And I look forward to actually reading Endangered 1 and 2.
I appreciate it. I really do appreciate you guys.
I will.
Talking. So, and please, anybody out there, if I can ever help you in any way, I'm far from making it, but I've got a little bit of experience under my belts, and I'm always more than happy to help anybody as much as I can as far as insight that I'm able to offer that would help you out on your way. I'd be more than happy to do that. So please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you guys. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
And same from us. We're no Joe Rogan, but if you ever need anything from us humble old podcasters, we got your back.
If you need anything from me and our 60 subscribers, you let me know. We're here for you.
You need to have a voice your thing, and you're like, we need somebody on this show. You call me. I love to talk. I'll hop on here anytime, man.
He talks a lot.
Yes, I do.
I can't wait to find what character I'm going to dress up as.
Wait, hold on. He talks a lot. Says the woman whose her name actually says Ori Gibbler, the voice of Geeky Vengeance.
I call it like I see it.
Right.
Takes one to know one.
I love
you
it.
know,
so
I
much.
talked a lot.
Yeah.
Just shut up.
Well, John, thank you again. Thank y'all for being here for the interview, and we're gonna get back to the episode. So let's do that.
Thanks, John, for coming in and talking with us about Endangered. Some awesome comics. We got to read them, and personally, I love it.
I haven't read them yet, but just the fact that it looks like Starship Troopers looks very
Dude,
to me.
It is so worth a read.
Yeah. And thank you for all of our friends of the cast that joined us for that interview as well. You can find John's Endangered comics. They're not endangered because they're in short supply. They're endangered by title. We have his links in the description of this episode, so go and check him out. If you're looking for a nice space buggy adventure, go and check it out. And also check out his novel. We have his Amazon link to his novel about being a first responder in New Orleans. We have that in there as well, so go and check that out. And from one John to another, let's get into our last interview of this episode. We have Mr. John from Diebold Comics talking about his inspiration behind his comic series. And, well, let's just let him tell you. How about that?
Bye, John. Hi, John.
Bye, John. Hi, John.
Transition.
All right, Fandomites, our last in the series of 3 interviews that were previously recorded for this episode is Mr. John Holland. Welcome to the show, Mr. John. We are also joined by Ori and Josh from the second interview as well, with the other John, Mr. Jon McCarthy. So we got two Johns and a Fission team, I guess, of the trend for these interviews. But so kind of the same formula for what we talked about with the other 2 interviews. Mr. John, he is a comic book writer, and over at Diebold Comics. I'm having to remember what I'm going to say before I click the photos. And has several books out, A Girl and Her Dog. We have Alma, Life During Wartime, bunch of different comics. And our whole thing for this episode is just to talk about literacy, how important it is, but to do that, we also wanted to talk to indie comic creators about what it means to them and how they got started and what they're doing with it, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, Mr. John, if you just want to take it from there.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I got started in comics, writing comics probably a long, long time ago. I've been writing comics pretty much since I was in high school, or even before that. Back in the 80s, I actually had been published through different some black and white companies like Fantagraphics, Innovation, Amazing Comics, Malibu, and different companies like that. In the last few years, I've been actually self-publishing myself. I've created my own imprint, Diebold Comics, to self-publish myself. Started Diebold about a year ago, actually just a little over a year ago in April. And since then, I've just published my 15th comic.
Oh, wow. Very nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
have them all at my house.
Now, some of them reprints from I went back and reprinted some comics that I had of some of the work I'd published back through Fantagraphics and some of the other publishers. Who Venture Comics, I had actually had written an adaptation of Harry Harrison's Death World book. Republished it, different things like that. And I'm doing a lot of new stuff too. One of my newer books is A Girl and Her Dog. Tony Isabella, who is the creator of Black Lightning and did a lot of work for Marvel and DC over the years, actually reviewed it and called it one of the best comics of the year.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's praise.
I couldn't have asked for a better review. He had asked for people to send him comics to review and read, and I sent him to him and wasn't really expecting to see anything from it. And one day I opened his blog. I was actually at work on my phone, and I seen the cover, and I was kind of afraid to scroll down to see what he thought about it. And he just, I mean, it was an awesome review. Like I said, I couldn't have paid for a review as good as that. One of the newer comics I'm working on is Alma, which I'm getting ready to kickstart probably in the next month to 2 months. And Alma's, the tagline for Alma is, "What if Buffy was a 72-year-old grandmother?" So that even people that have never.
All right.
It's so good, Gal.
No, I'm here for it. I think the thing I didn't like about Buffy was all the teenage angst and drama. So you take that out of the mix.
Alma has a garden gnome as a sidekick. I'm just saying.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
So it's like what if Grace and Frankie from Netflix decided to go hunt vampires and the supernatural creatures with the Winchester boys?
That's actually a pretty good description.
That's awesome.
And people have never even read Buffy, have watched Buffy, still kind of know who she is because she's become such an iconic character. So it shows when I do shows. I always ask. I'll say, "Well, have you watched Buffy?" And a lot of people, especially a lot of the younger people nowadays, say no, but they still know who Buffy is. So once I use the tagline, they're kind of like, "Oh, okay." So it works pretty good as far as that goes. We're gonna do the first issue as a Kickstarter. We're already working on the second issue. The second issue is written, and the artist is busy drawing it at the moment. So also have another comic I've got coming out called 2 Tons of Fury, which is taking 2 public domain characters, Herbie and Fat Man the Human Flying Saucer.
Okay. Yeah, I did. I saw the promo photos for that.
Yeah, it's I've got a picture of the cover. This is the cover. It's
okay.
Okay.
And it's taking the 2 characters and it's basically making it like it was an issue from that time. It's a very silly, a very fun story. We didn't try to modernize the characters. Just taking them and moving them, just doing a new story with it. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, the colorist on it is doing an awesome job because I asked him to color it like a comic from the 60s. And in addition to just the color work, he made the pages look like they were from the 60s. You're going to pick up this comic and it looks like it's a leftover, a lost comic from like the 60s. The pages have that old brownish looking color of a comic when they turn old.
Oh, nice.
It is going to be awesome. Yeah, that's coming out in December from Antarctica Press.
Okay.
And I forgot A Girl and Her Dog is actually being published from It's Alive Comics. So I'm doing a lot of stuff, self-publishing it, but I'm also, if a publisher, wants to do something, I'm working with publishers too. So
that's awesome. So we asked this question of our other interview guests, but so did you read a lot of comics or a lot of just books, novels coming up that have inspired this creative process that you're on now?
Yeah, I've read since, I could hold a book in my hands. The first book that I think that I can recall reading was Mike Mulligan's Amazing Steam Shovel, or Mike Mulligan and His Amazing Steam Shovel. And when I was a kid, when I was 4 and 5 years old, my parents had put me in a book club for Dr. Seuss books. So I've been reading since, like I was 4 or 5 years. I can't really recall the first time I read because I can always remember reading. And I've always, my dad was always loved reading, and I think I got my love of reading from that. And I've read, my house looks like a library. I have thousands and thousands of books all over the place, and I'm always picking something up and reading it. I started reading comics when I was young, and just, I've never actually had that falling out period where a lot of people will read comics for a while, then stop reading them, and then come back to them like maybe 4 or 5 years later. I've pretty much stuck with them. There's been a few times I wasn't reading a lot of comics, but I've never completely given up on them.
Okay. And so literacy, very important, obviously, for you from a young, and you said you even got that from your dad, loved to read and everything too.
Oh yeah, my dad was always reading. He was, it's like before, after him and my mom retired, he would go shopping with my mom, and sometimes I'd be going to the mall and walking through the mall, and I'd see him on a bench in the mall. He'd go with my mom to the store, and then she'd go shopping, and he'd go on the bench, and he'd have a book with him, and he'd be sitting out there reading it.
That's so cool. Kind of hard to worry about how many people are looking at you funny for holding your wife's purse if you're reading a book.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. How much is that, I guess being brought up by people who love to read and you loving to read, how much is that kind of bled over to your work? How much has that inspired you to, is it at the core? Is it or is it the reason you do it, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of it. And Alma actually is a very personal book because Alma, the name of the character is named after my mom.
Okay.
Yeah. And, one of the characters in the book too is the ghost of her late husband, who's named after my dad. So a lot of the character, my mom don't go hunting demons and vampires.
Yes, she does.
I've always said my mom is like one of the strongest people around. She's like 85 years old, and last week she was outside washing her trailer. And
see, I feel like, John, even if she did do that, though, that you wouldn't tell us that that's what she does in the free time. So I can't believe
you.
This is just residual memories of your mom when you were younger,
Things that I wasn't supposed to see and know.
That's so cool. Oh man, that's great. I look forward to reading some of your work. I didn't get a chance to before we actually when we scheduled the interview. Of course, it was like a couple of months ago, and now even this is coming out almost a month after we've actually recorded it. So hopefully by the time this comes out, I will have already read, and
I got you. I got all the links.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Alma definitely sounds really fun. I think I'm gonna have to check that out because I was a huge Supernatural fan when it came out. I watched that with my mom, and then I watched Buffy a little bit. What teenager didn't? But I was always more of a fan of Angel anyway. So her actual demonic boyfriend. So
Supernatural was awesome. So if it's
I was a big fan of Supernatural too. That was an awesome.
I like early Supernatural. I think around season 7 or 8 is kind of when I feel Supernatural kind of lost its touch.
You mean when the showrunners wanted to end the show, but the fans said no or we'll riot? So yeah,
this is why we can't have nice things.
I think after like season 8 in Supernatural, like they literally just started throwing stuff at the wall to see what was.
Yeah, pretty much. When the angels fell from heaven, that's when I was like, okay, this is getting out there now.
Yeah, that's when I lost it. I was like, I can't with this anymore.
The show.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Dude, we're like so far.
Look, if you sat down right now and started trying to watch all of Supernatural, you would forget that he said that by the time you get to the point where it happens.
So much happens.
So
much happens.
Yeah, I actually haven't watched till the end of it. I think I
haven't
went to
either.
about season
I haven't
8 or
either.
so, and I haven't finished it.
I
know a
only
little
watched
bit
it for the
about what
Winchesters.
happened. Winchesters are wonderful. I know a little bit about what happened in the final seasons because I heard about the Chuck guy actually ended up being God, which was like
or something like that.
Oh, I knew that.
See, and that even like I heard that wasn't even the full truth. Like that it was he was taking like Skynet. He was taking the form of someone that I don't know. You know, there's tons of fan theories out there and stuff. And since I haven't watched it, I cannot confirm. So. But yeah, no, that's awesome.
Things.
You know things.
I know things.
She knows a thing or two because she's
Brian grows a beard and knows things. Ori just knows things.
I just know people who tell me things, and I watch all the things.
And I'm just sitting over here. I haven't caught up with Obi-Wan or Stranger Things or the Orville yet. So,
dude, the Stranger Things now,
right?
Yeah,
now.
I'm on episode
season
2.
1 of it so far.
Yeah, I'm on
John.
Season, what is it?
Come on, John.
Part 4, episode 2 is where I'm at. So, but yeah, well,
the second part of the season drops like
12 days
in like a few days.
Yeah,
Yeah,
July 1st.
12 days. Oh, wait,
5 days before my birthday.
So, like a lot of days before this comes out. So now we're having a conversation in the past right now.
Time travel.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey.
It goes game when there's stuff.
Any input they wanted to, any questions they wanted to ask John while we have him here?
I'll jump in with some questions.
Okay.
I've always got questions.
You got questions, we got answers.
I'll start with a couple of questions that I asked the last John that we had on. So my first question is, what would be? Was there a point that you had where you felt like, man, I can really do this? It sounds like you've been doing it for a really long time, but was there any point where you felt like you had hit a certain benchmark and now you're like, oh yeah, I can do this. Could be a career. This can be something that I do regularly and no turning back kind of thing.
I kind of look at it as I don't want to say I've given up on it, but I'm not looking at it as a career. I have a full-time job, and it kind of pays the bills for the printing and the artwork and everything else. I always said if I can ever get to the point where that will pay for stuff, that would be great. But I think it was the opposite. I reached a point where I realized if I want to keep doing it, I'm going to have to keep working full-time maybe and just, and something I love doing so much that I enjoy doing that I don't mind doing it. If it's,
right.
and I'm happy. Like I said, if one day it pays the bills and I can quit my job and just write, I'd be thrilled with it. But as long as I can keep writing and keep getting the comics out there, I'm pretty happy with it.
Okay. So my next question then is, what would be your biggest piece of advice for people that are creative, not necessarily just authors or people trying to write comics or write books or whatever, but just artists and creative people in general? What would be your best advice for them?
I think just don't give up. If it's something that you love to do, just do it. Not everybody's going to be Stephen King and, be able to retire, or even not even Stephen King. Not everyone's going to be able to make a living off of it. But if it's something that gives you pleasure and you can still do it without, sacrificing your life or your marriage or whatever situation you're in, just continue to do it. Do what you'd like to do what you love, and that's something that I've pretty much stuck through. It's there's been times when down and thought, I don't want to continue doing it, but it's something that I just can't imagine not doing. I just can't. There was a period right around the late 90s that I kind of took about a 3 or 4 year break, and I didn't really write too much. But I don't think there was a time even during that break that I wasn't thinking about what I wanted to write. And it just and it finally brought me back to it, and I was like, all right, I've got to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's it's funny that the first thing you said was don't give up, because that was also the very first thing that John said.
Yeah.
And then embellished on it. So it sounds like that's some pretty solid advice, and I appreciate it. It's good to hear, because I think all of us can agree that we've had moments when we've tried to do the things that we love, whether it's on YouTube or podcasting or whatever we're doing, where we're like, man, is it worth it? Like, should I keep doing this? Is this a waste of time? But the truth is that we do really love doing this, and we're passionate about it. And even though we have those rough days where, maybe we need to kick ourselves back into gear, or we need a friend to do it for us. It's really good advice to stay on the path, and that if you're passionate about it and you love doing it, there are going to be fruits of that labor in the positive sense. So I guess my next question is kind of a two-parter. Do you ever struggle with writer's block? And if so, what are some of the ways that you combat it?
As soon as I say no, I'm going to have writer's block. But, I think part of the reason I don't is because I'm always writing so many different things. Like right now, I'm probably working on like 4 or 5 different comics and series. My biggest issue is I have to rein myself in, because even writing all this, I'm thinking of another idea, and and there's only so much that I can physically do as far as with money and stuff like that. The biggest issue is just having the money to pay for the printing and things like this.
Yeah.
But I've if I start getting writer's block on one subject or one comic, I'll just move to the next one. And I never really write one comic at a time. It's like I'll be working on one comic and I'm writing something else. I'll write 3 or 4 pages on this, and maybe the next day I'll go back and write something on that. Like right now I'm writing on the new issue of Alma. I'm writing the next issue of Robot Sex #2, and a couple other books that I've kind of got like in the planning stages and whatnot.
I'm like that with video games. Like if I get stuck on a level on one video game,
you just go play another one.
I'll go play another one and play through it for a while, and then I'll think about the other video game while I'm playing that one.
My biggest issue.
Yeah,
my biggest issue is I'm like that with life in general. Like all of my hobbies, I look around, and even if you were to look at my wall over here, full of different pictures and posters and etc., and my desk in general, it just has all my different hobbies strewn about. So it's like, oh, today I'm editing a video, today I'm going on a YouTube channel of some friends, and tomorrow I'm going to go to some gaming event. Like there's always something different, and I have to like force myself to like focus on a thing for a little bit, because it's like you can get like okay at a bunch of different things, but if you want to really excel at something, then you kind of got to focus on that thing. But in your case, it sounds like you've really focused on writing, and you've done it in many different mediums, but it's been writing a lot of times. It's really cool to see that you've kept it up from such a young age, literally decades now that you've been doing this. And that's really cool and inspirational, to be honest.
Thank you. I've been told before, sometimes as a writer, I should focus on more like one genre or one character or one area, and my mind I would get bored so quick,
Yeah.
Like all I wrote was Alma. As much as I like writing it, I would just get bored so quick on it, because Alma is so different than A Girl and Her Dog, and from Robot Sex, and from my Lizards, and it just every series is different, and I would just go crazy if I had to concentrate on one thing all the time.
Well, I think everyone can agree, like, eating pizza is delicious, but if you have pizza for dinner every single night, 7 days a week, eventually you're not going to like pizza anymore.
Exactly.
Beard, you bring up a really good point, and that really brings us to the most important question that we have for tonight that we haven't asked yet, and that is, John, what is your favorite pizza topping? This is what the people came for.
We're here. We're waiting.
Cool, but like the truth needs to come out. What is your favorite pizza
I'm going
topping?
to be controversial. I'm going to say pepperoni and pineapple.
Yes, let's go.
You know what's so funny is I was even going to frame the question, be like, "What's your favorite pizza topping, and why is it pineapple?" Just to set up the debate.
You ain't getting no debate here, my bro.
That's good. So pepperoni specifically, though, not ham?
if it's any type of meat with pineapple.
Okay.
I'm not a veggie eater. Even outside of pizza, I don't eat veggies, or I don't eat much that's healthy and good for myself.
I don't mess with that pineapple pizza myself. I like pineapple. I like pizza. I just don't like my pineapple warm.
It's okay. You are more than welcome to be wrong. It's fine.
Pineapple should be cold.
Now, I will agree. There is something to be said about cold pineapple, and you cannot have cold pineapple on a pizza. Just
No,
I completely
no.
agree with you on that. But I like warm pineapple as well. So,
all right. To get back to everything, I work personally with John. This John.
We weren't
and the other
already
John.
on everything. I thought that was a very important conversation.
We are breaking down barriers here today. Okay? We are solving the real issues in the world.
I'm force feeding Beard pineapple pizza when I see him. But anyway,
Corey's over here like, okay, normally when I'm on this show, I'll roll with you guys when y'all go down the tangents of the rabbit holes, but I gotta do my job
We've got time. We're timed here. Okay, but as the only female on this panel right now, and one who has read almost all of your comics, actually I've read them all. It's a problem. You write some very amazingly strong and independent female characters. A Girl and Her Dog, Alma, Ayla, just the list goes on. Where do you get your inspiration for these very strong, empowered female characters?
It's you.
Well, one was my mom.
I was just going to say, it's Ori.
But part of it too is like, especially when I started to rewrite, come back after I took my 3 or 4 year hiatus off, in a sense, was I didn't want to write just white middle age or white male characters. That's and then there's nothing against it, and I have some characters like that, but they're all over the place. I wanted to be diverse, and it's, I know I'm taking a chance because I'm not a female, so I could screw up really good writing a female. Ayla is a character that's female and a person of color. And that was really scary when I started to write that, because I'm, if I do that really wrong, I could make myself look really foolish or really stupid or even worse, So, and it's been a conscious decision to, when I create a character, I kind of look at it and does it have to be a white guy, and there's some characters I've got that. Great, I'm a white guy and I like, so, but there's some characters that are still like that, but a lot of characters, when I write it, I just want to change it a little different, robot sex, the main character is a woman and a robot, all
no sex.
Yeah, lots of robots, but no sex. All the sex is in between the panels. And a lot of my characters, I think I've created in the last few years, have all been a little more diverse than normal.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
And I can screw up really easy too. So
we talked about that a lot in the woman-splaining episode that we did, that Ori and our friends hosted for us, I guess technically. And that was one of the key points and that was one of the things that it's a personal opinion, but it's a very loud opinion from a lot of the masses too. It's like, give us these characters, stop dominating, stop. Not that we don't like the characters that are already out there, but just stop. Give us something else. Give us something new. I'm even like that. Like, look, Captain America is my favorite comic book hero, but I'm also one of those that realizes it's a mantle, not a person.
Yes.
So the thing they're doing now, especially in Marvel Comics, with they went with Sam after Cap stepped down, gave over Bucky and then Sam, and now there's now it's kind of this whole thing where they're like, there's a Captain America in everybody kind of thing, and I love that. And all these characters that they're introducing don't fit that normal, the patriotic white man with his chest puffed out, and the blonde hair and blue eyes or whatever. And I love that about that it's being done to one of my favorite characters. There are a lot of Captain America fans that won't agree with me, but it's okay. I mean, It's like I told Bride, it's okay for you to be wrong. It's fine.
I mean, one thing that we're as the female, like I'm finding, like it's so nice to see characters that were made for us. Like, I mean, I feel like Alma was made for older women who feel like they're, at the end of their lifespan. But here's this amazing, like older lady who has a gnome as a sidekick watcher person, and like she just has something new and fresh that I have not been force fed by anybody else, and it's amazing, and it's something I've always wanted.
Let's just go ahead and admit it. It almost just the manufacturing of John's crush on Betty White, just like we all have.
My secret's out.
No, it's all of us. You
are not alone. Like I love that woman,
Betty White.
Oh, yes. I never met her, and I loved that woman.
Oh yes.
Well, yeah, I think you bring up really good points, and I think it's something that's refreshing, and it's nice to see, because I know personally I get frustrated sometimes when I feel like different, whether movies, TV shows, whatever it is, but it feels like they gender bend or make a character gay just for the sake of it. Like there's times where it just feels so disingenuous and so like they're just throwing it out there for like,
their
PR
posturing.
reasons. Yeah, it's just like, hey, check this out. Look what we did. And I think the majority of people, that's not really what they want. What they want is they want characters of different sexes and sexual orientations and races that are just as, well thought out and cared about, and the effort is put in just as much as these other characters that we know and love. You know what I mean? Like we're not asking for exactly. Making it like a normal thing, so it's not like, oh, wait a minute, this chick is a really cool superhero and that's weird, or this chick is a really cool villain, that's weird, And I think it's nice to see that it's from the start, it's from the ground up, because I think that's really where it needs to happen, because just making a well-established hero a different sexual orientation or a different race, I don't think that's really what's going to help the issues. I think what really helps is starting from the ground up and creating characters and creating, because
we don't want to become stagnant with the characters we already have. Tell new stories.
Yes.
Tell real stories and we talked about that in our Pride episode, which was now 2 episodes back from the time this is coming out. But we talked about that with Jay, and it's like when they and I described it as when it's in your face, and I'm going to make sure to explain it better here. When it's done for the attention of doing it, that doesn't make sense to me. When you create a character like American Chavez, Echo, or when you even have whole issues of Deadpool that are dedicated to the fact that he's pansexual. He's been pansexual since he was created, first of all, and a lot of people forget that. But that is better than giving an issue of X-Men where someone randomly looks at Iceman and goes, "Hey, aren't you gay?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I am." It's like, yet you were just fondling over Rogue last issue. What happened? That it doesn't really make sense. Build the strong female character like Chavez and Echo and all, even DC, Batwoman, there's a bunch of characters over at DC that fit into the LGBTQ representation. It's amazing. It's amazing that these stories are finally being told, like you said, from the ground up, instead of just taking a franchise and going, what if we did this? And it looks a lot like pandering because the company chose to do that.
Well, one thing that I've found, like, especially in the indie scene and, anybody who's kind of like breaking in, to the bigger scene, like they have more leeway to kind of do these amazing characters and these amazingly strong, independent and out there, strong females or strong black women or strong black men, just something very different. And the indie scene really gets to kind of lash their teeth into being able to be creative. And that's what I've really enjoyed about all that.
Like that series that Keith sells. I can't remember which artist he sells it for, but our friend Keith over at Blurtish, what was it? Harriet Tubman, Demon Slayer?
Yes.
Like that's, because that's already a very powerful historical figure that everyone should look up to. And then
It's a
for her to
documentary.
also be a demon slayer, it's amazing. Like
It's her biography.
Well, it's like
Let's not kid ourselves.
It's not, just because you tell me that didn't actually happen, I don't know if I can believe you because that's exactly what you'd say if it did. So.
Historians don't know.
Right. Well, if we don't have anything else, guys, I guess we better wrap this up so we can get back to the actual episode here. But before we go, Double Comics, we'll have the links for all that where you can find the books, all the social medias. If they have the Instagram of a book face, a gram Insta, a space that's mine, a chat snap. We'll put all those links in the description so y'all can go and enjoy, all the books we talked about, Alma and everything else. And John, really thank you for being here.
Yes,
thank you for bringing your PR person with you.
It's a pleasure to meet you, John.
Thank y'all for having me. You're only my third podcast that I've done so far.
Oh, that's awesome.
Lucky number 3. All right.
Podcasting world.
We're very honored, and if you need anything from our little group of nerds at any time, if you need us to share something, put something out there, just definitely don't hesitate to ask. We'll be happy to help.
Appreciate that.
Josh, it was good seeing you again. Tell all the rest of the Knights over at the Nerds table hello for us. And Ori, hope we had fun at Jackson Comic-Con because that was
we did. We know you. We know it. It was our 1 year anniversary.
2 days.
Yeah.
Are we 1 year anniversary? I love you.
So love you guys. Much love. And we're going to get back to the episode. All right, guys. That's going to do it for us. Really hope you enjoyed this literacy-inspired episode. Hope you do go and check out all of the creators that we featured. Diebold Comics links are in the description, just like everyone else's, so go and check those out. That the grandma supernatural hunter. That Alma, that's
awesome.
That's definitely going to be my favorite read once I finally get a chance to pick it up. And if you're inspired to do so, please do that. Don't forget about the Patreon. We do still have that up. We have a lot of new content coming out. Should already be up, as a matter of fact, if you're listening to this. We have some live Talking Nerdy segments that we did at different cons and stuff like that. We're always going to be trying to put out new content there as well. So check that out. And be on the lookout for our next episode, which at this time, we don't know what it is, but
it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. It's always fun nerding out with you guys. Thank you, Jay, the Nerd Squatch, the social media sorcerer supreme, for being here. Bearded brother of mine. I will see you next episode. Until then, I've been the Bear.
I've been the Beard.
And that's been Nerd Squatch down there. We want to remind you, as always, to stay awesome,
stay bearded,
and much love, Fandomites. We'll see y'all next time. We are out of here.
Boom, cut the check. All right.
Another episode done. We hope you enjoyed it. New episodes are released every other Friday at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. Check back then or subscribe so that your device downloads it automatically. Audio episodes are now available pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts, so it's really easy to share them with all your nerdy friends. For YouTube viewers, subscribe and click the little bell so you're notified about all our new content. And Apple users, please don't forget to rate and review on the app. That helps more nerds find us. Links to talk nerdy to us can be found in the episode description as always. You can chat with the Bear, the Beard, or the rest of the Bearded Bear team, head researcher and graphic designer, Mama Bear, the master of marketing, Han Bralo, or the social media sorcerer, Nerd Squatch. Huge thanks to them and all of the geeks of the round table and friends of the cast. Much love y'all. Lastly, for more cool music like this awesome new outro track, go check out HarlequinSoul, Secret Apex on Facebook and Spotify. His links are in the description as well. Talk at you next episode, nerds. See you then.
Are you a fan or just pretend? I'd like to know if you're a friend or an enemy. If so, stay away from around me. Welcome to the end. Are you a fan or just pretend?